Thank you, and good morning on my behalf as well. I am Mikko Hypponen. And since we've been speaking about the history of the company, I was employee number 6 when I joined F-Secure in 1991. 3 years later, I set up the first web server that I ever set up in my life. That was the 17th web server in Finland, if I remember right. And I've spent my whole life fighting online crime and online criminals and online attacks. And today, when I look at where we are, well, the fact is that the situation has never been moving as quickly as it is right now. We are seeing more new malware and more new attacks than ever before. And they are coming from a changing enemy. Because our lives used to be very simple. We would find viruses and decode the viruses and add detection of the viruses and then try to figure out who wrote the viruses. And 15 years ago, every time when we found a virus writer, he was a teenage boy. So viruses used to be written by kids. And their motive for writing viruses was that they had no motive. They gained nothing with malware writing. They weren't making any money, they weren't becoming famous, they weren't doing any protesting. They were just writing viruses because they could. And when we look at the enemy today, everybody has a motive. Malware is being written by either by gangs, organized online crime online, and they make millions with their malware, or it's coming from activists or protesters, movements like Anonymous, which are trying to send a message or trying to protest with their malware, or it's coming from the governments themselves. And that's probably been the biggest shift I've seen during my life. That governments themselves entered this picture, and governments themselves started to write malware and to use it against their own citizens and foreign citizens. So when we look at the malware writing done by organized criminals, we quite often see cases like this. This is a ransom Trojan coming from, we believe, St. Petersburg in Russia. It's a piece of malware known as crypto wall. And it will lock your system and demand for payment from the victim in order to get your files recovered. There are many different versions of malware like this. For example, here's another Trojan called Reveton, which, as you can see, is in Turkish. In Turkey, it will speak to the victims in their local language and try to convince them that their system has been locked, not by criminals, but by the local law enforcement. And now you have to pay a fine to unlock your computer. And the reason why your computer has been locked is that you were doing something illegal. For example, you had illegal copies of music or movies on your computer, so it was locked by the police and you had to pay. And if you actually pay, if you pay these guys, or if you pay these guys, they actually will unlock your computer. So at least they are honest criminals. But they have to be honest, because they know that the victims, before the victims go and pay the ransom, the victims will Google for help. Like, they will ask the net that if I'm going to pay the ransom, will I get my computer back? Will I get my files back? And they will find that there are previous victims who did pay and who did get their files back. So they know it works, and then they will pay. You can also see that the payment mechanism with these ransom Trojans quite typically is done with Bitcoin, the online virtual currency. There's nothing wrong in Bitcoin itself, but it's very handy for criminals in cases like this. Another big problem we've been fighting for the last year has been point of sales Trojans, POS Trojans. They are Trojans which infect computers, but they are not normal computers. They are computers which look like that. Cashier computers, the kind of computers you will find in any shop. They look like cashier systems, but they are actually computers. And the operating system they typically run is called Windows Embedded. And I will let you in on a secret. Windows Embedded is actually a code word for Windows XP. So they're running an operating system which is actually very similar to Windows XP. And as we all know, Windows XP is more than 10 years old, and it's not one of the most secure operating systems out there. So why would criminals be interested in infecting systems like this? Well, they do it to get these. Credit card numbers. And this is interesting because our advice to internet users everywhere during Christmas shopping season has for many years been that if you're worried about losing your credit card number while doing Christmas shopping, don't do shopping online, go and shop in the real world. Now, with these point-of-sale Trojans, maybe the advice should be that if you want to keep your credit card number secure, don't shop in the real world, but use online shops instead. I don't really know which would be the right advice, but we are seeing attacks like these shift into the physical cashier machines that are being used in shops everywhere around the world. But like I said, the governmental malware writing has been a big shift, because it really means that governments themselves are writing malware. And when governments write malware, they have much bigger resources and much bigger budgets than anyone else. So which governments are writing malware? Well, for example, Russians are doing it. Just during this year, we've researched and analyzed 5 different malware families that we believe are coming from the Russian government. They include Trojans like Hypponen, which is actually trying to find industrial factory control systems. That's the first malware we found since Stuxnet, which is trying to do something with factory control systems, the kind of systems we use everywhere in factories. We've also analyzed OnionDuke, which is malware coming from Russian government, which is infecting users of the Tor network. So if you try to secure your surfing by surfing through Tor, if you happen to go through the exit node run by Russian government, every program you download will automatically be infected. And when you get the downloads to your computer and run them, you will become infected. And then we saw Cosmic Duke. And we started paying attention, especially to Cosmic Duke, because of the victims. Because almost all of the victims were in one country. And that country was Ukraine. And the attacks started roughly at the same time as the crises between Russia and Ukraine started to escalate. Cosmic Duke is an espionage Trojan. So it's used for spying. Once your system becomes infected, the attackers will gain access to everything you do on your computer. They can access all your files, they can look at your screen, they can turn on the microphone and record what you speak near your computer. And it's actually a Windows Trojan. In fact, natively, it's a Windows screensaver. And it's being distributed to victims in Ukraine in targeted emails. So the victims that the Russians want to hit are pinpointed, and they receive an email from someone they know and trust. So for example, they might receive an email from their boss, and then the email has an attachment, and that attachment file is the Cosmic Duke Trojan. And since it natively is a screensaver, what it actually looks like by default is this, file.scr, with the default Windows screensaver icon. And if you receive that file as an email attachment, you're not going to click on that. That doesn't look very trustworthy at all. Even if you get an email from your boss that this file is attached, you probably won't click on it. But that's not what Cosmic Duke looks like when the attackers mask it. The first thing they do is that they change the icon to this. just by changing the icon of the screensaver, it immediately looks more trustworthy. It starts to look like a PDF file. Then they changed the file name from file.scr, and they renamed the file to this. And this makes no sense. It's just garbage. And the reason why it's garbage is that this file name is still missing one character. It's missing the first character of the file name. That character is the Unicode RLO character. And RLO stands for right to left override. That's the character you use when you display languages which are written from right to left. Normally we write from left to right, but for example Arabic is written from right to left. So when you add that special character here as the first character of the file name, then Windows will automatically display the file name from the end to the beginning. And now the file name reads Ukraine Gas Pipeline Security Report March 2014 .pdf. Now it looks like a PDF file. It has the PDF icon, it ends in PDF, and it's a screensaver. We know it's a screensaver because the first letters of the file name are rcs dot, which reversed is .scr. And now if you receive this file as an email attachment from an email from your boss, you will click on it. I keep saying that our job would be so much easier if our enemy would be stupid. But our enemy is not stupid. These are pretty clever attacks. So this is what the Russians are doing. Then we have the Chinese. In fact, the very first governmental attacks that I ever analyzed were in 2003. And those were from the Chinese government. Espionage attacks targeting defense contractors and defense companies and ministries in the West. They are still continuing those attacks today. Chinese are clearly one of the leaders in governmental attacks and governmental malware writing. They were also very good in marching. Just look at these guys. Pretty nice. Finnish military can't march like that. It doesn't look like that. I don't know about the Turkish military. I'm guessing it doesn't look like this either. No? They do. Exactly like this. Very good. Finnish military is more like that. Actually, Finnish military is very good. Not in marching, but fighting. So an example of the Chinese governmental action is what we've now been watching in Hong Kong. We've all heard about protests in Hong Kong. People on the streets demanding for their rights. And these protests have been organized through the internet and through applications, mobile applications. For example, here's a picture of a WhatsApp message sent to the protesters by one of the organizing groups. And they advise people to download this application to their phone, and the application can then be used to organize the protests. However, there's a problem. This WhatsApp message was not sent by the organizers of the protest. This WhatsApp message was spoofed. It was actually sent from mainland China. It was actually sent from Beijing. We believe it was sent by the Chinese government, or most likely by PLA, the People's Liberation Army, and their cyber unit. We believe that because if you follow the link and download this mobile app to your iPhone or to your Android phone, you actually do get an application which can be used to organize protests and to communicate with other protesters. However, the application will also collect your contacts from your phone and your physical location from the GPS of your phone and sends both of that information to Beijing. So this is what governmental malware looks like. This is what governmental mobile malware looks like. And I guess we've all seen the headlines about Sony. This is what it actually looked like from the point of view of the Sony employees. This is from Sony's intro. So if you are an employee of Sony, 8 days ago when you got to work and you started your computer and went to your intro, you saw a message from GOP, Guardians of Peace. And they let all the Sony employees know that Sony Pictures has been thoroughly hacked. All the files have been stolen. And if Sony Pictures management doesn't follow the orders, they will be deleting all the data they have in their hands and publishing all the stolen files, including stolen movies, stolen unreleased movies made by Sony. And we don't actually know what they were asking Sony to do. But whatever it is, Sony didn't do it. And as an end result, these hackers released internal data from Sony last week, including 5 unreleased movies, which are now circulating the net. Internal information of Sony, including the salaries of Sony employees, their social security numbers, their home addresses, things like that. It's pretty bad. So what were the hackers asking for? What was it that Sony Pictures wasn't ready to do? Were they asking for money? We don't think so. We don't think that the attackers here were doing the attacks to ask for money. We think they were asking for something else, and we don't exactly know what. One theory, which had been circulating quite a bit, is that what they were asking Sony to do was not to release one of their upcoming movies. And that movie would be a movie called The Interview, starring James Franco and Seth Rogen. And this movie hasn't yet been released. It's going to come out on Christmas Day. And the movie is about a talk show in the United States, which gets a once-in-a-lifetime chance to go to North Korea and to interview Kim Jong-un of North Korea. And then CIA recruits these journalists on a secret mission to actually go and kill Kim Jong-un. So the theory that's circulating on the net is that the attackers are not just some random hackers, the attackers are from the government of North Korea. And the attack against Sony Pictures was to convince Sony not to release the movie. Now, we don't actually know if this is true or if it's not true. But at least it's plausible. Alright, so Russians are writing viruses. Chinese are writing viruses. Even North Koreans are writing viruses. Who else? Well, Iran is writing viruses. Iran has mostly been, well actually that's the last picture I'll show about Sony. We have tracked down where the Sony attack is coming from. And it was coming from this hotel. This is the Sant Regis Hotel in Bangkok. The attackers most likely were doing their physical hacking from this location, which of course doesn't mean that they would be themselves from Thailand. We just knew that they were in this facility where they were doing the hacking using the hotel Wi-Fi. And that's a nice place to hack from, I'll tell you that. I mean, this is a nice hotel. I like it. That's a nice hotel. I like that as well. So if you're going to hack, at least you can do it in style. So what about Iran? Well, Iran has mostly been known as a target of online attacks. For example, Stuxnet was targeting the Iranian nuclear enrichment system. Flame was targeting Iranian governmental systems. Duku was targeting Iranian military systems. And all three of those, Stuxnet, Flame and Duku, were attacks launched by the US government. So they were attacks from the United States targeting the government of Iran. those attacks were most likely done in cooperation with the Israelis. So the United States and Israel attacking Iran. Now last week, a company called Cylance from USA released a report into Operation Cleaver. Operation Cleaver is retaliation from the Iranian government for Stuxnet, Flame and Duku targeting targets in the United States and elsewhere in the West. And it's a pretty serious attack. For example, they've breached the security of 3 airports, multiple factories, and so on. So Iran is trying to fight back. And that brings us to malware written by the United States. I already mentioned Stuxnet and Flame and Duku. Those are all examples of American malware used by US government to target the targets they're interested in. But the most recent example is a piece of malware called the Regime. This man is Professor Jean-Jacques Picater. He is a professor of cryptography and encryption in the Technical University of Brussels. He's an academic. Last year in September, he opened up his Windows computer to go and visit LinkedIn. And when he visited the LinkedIn website, his connection was intercepted by foreign agents, and the LinkedIn front page that he received was infected with the Regime malware, infecting his computer. And we believe this attack was launched by GCHQ, that's the United Kingdom Intelligence Agency. And the attack was launched with the Regime malware, which we believe is written together with the American and the British. So the British intelligence infecting a Belgian academic, why would they do that? Well, we actually don't know why they did it. We just know that they did it. His specialty is research into encryption security of smart cards and into researching how to recover from catastrophic failures in encryption systems. Most likely he was infected because of his work. The intelligence agency agents wanted to gain access to some of his research. However, the very same malware was also used to infect other targets in Brussels. Most importantly, one of the largest telecommunications companies in Belgium. Why would anybody be interested in infecting a telecom? Well, that particular company was the company which was handling all the internet connectivity and all the phone connectivity for European Union headquarters and for the headquarters of the European Council. The same malware was also used to hit targets in Austria. In particular, it was used to infect the headquarters of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association. The same malware was also used to target the government of Ireland. Now, who's interested in Ireland? Which countries are interested in spying on the government of Ireland? Well, obviously the United Kingdom, the neighbors are. And these attacks were launched by GCHQ. We know this based on leaks from Edward Snowden. Internal GCHQ slides describe these attacks. We also believe that the very same malware was used to hit a telco in Germany, a company called Stellar. His name is Ali Fares. He's the head engineer for Stellar, this company in Germany. Stellar provides internet connectivity for their clients over satellite links. So this is especially useful for companies operating in countries where it's hard to gain normal internet access. So they, for example, have lots of customers in Africa and Middle East. This company was also hacked by GCHQ. And here's a video released by Der Spiegel magazine in Germany, where Der Spiegel takes these secret documents from GCHQ, leaked by Edward Snowden, and shows it to the engineers of Stellar. This guy is a journalist working for Der Spiegel. All the other guys are engineers at Stellar, and they, for the first time, see these top secret files which list the targets that GCHQ has hacked, including telcos in Germany, including their own company. They just realized that their company has been hacked by the British. And then they see the list of names of people who've been hacking the company, and they see their own names. They just realize that they personally, their own computers, have been hacked. And they haven't been hacked by criminals. They've been hacked by a government. They've been hacked by the British government. One EU country's government hacking telcos in another EU country. The countries which are supposed to be friendly, using malware, backdoor and trojans to attack each other. Things like these would have sounded like science fiction just 10 years ago, when governments writing viruses and using it actively to hit other governments. But that's exactly where we are. That's exactly what's happening. Some companies are trying to fight back. These are declassified court transcripts from the United States. From a court called the FISA Court, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act Court. What's interesting about this court is that it's a secret court. It's a court which existence used to be secret. It's a court where the judges who run the court, their identities are secret. All their decisions are secret, and all the transcripts from the meetings are secret. That's a weird concept, secret court. And these notes are from a meeting where the FISA court was meeting with a lawyer from Yahoo. Because the United States government was asking Yahoo to gain access to Yahoo's customers' data. For example, email being sent by Yahoo Mail. And Yahoo didn't want to give that access. They went into the FISA court to defend their users, saying that this is legal and this is causing damage to our users. And the judge in the court claimed that there is no damage to Yahoo's users, even though US government will be gaining access to their information and reading their emails. There is no damage because this is a secret court. The users will never know that their email is being read. And if they don't know that their email is being read, there possibly cannot be any damage because they don't know. If they would know what's happening, of course, then there would be damage. But they will never know. So there is no damage. So Yahoo's case was thrown out. And the intercept of Yahoo's customers was started based on this decision. And then this decision was used to convince other US companies to follow. And this was one of the court cases which eventually led to the PRISM program, which was used by the NSA to tap communications of all of us when we use services like Google or Facebook or Yahoo or so. Yahoo tried defending us, the users, but they failed. And when we, foreigners, use American services, we have no rights. I'm not American, you're not American. When we use American services, we have no rights. We have no privacy rights, we have no rights at all. So when the US government is collecting our data as we use Google or Facebook or any of the American services or the US cloud services, when they collect our data, they are breaking no laws. It's completely legal for US government to look at our data and keep our data forever. Because we are not Americans, we're foreign. And we have no rights. That's why I'm very glad to work from a country which actually does give privacy rights, not just to our own citizens, but also to foreigners. Our laws actually respect the privacy of anybody. Our laws don't speak about Finnish people. Our laws speak about humans. We grant the privacy rights to humans, not just to our own citizens. And private and privacy is a morphing concept. It's changing. My friend Aral Valkan described this very well. He explained that private used to mean something different. Private used to mean that you and me, just the two of us, we would go somewhere where there's no one else and we would speak in private. So no one else would hear what we're saying. A private discussion. Today, that's not what private means. So for example, when you send a private message on Facebook, it's called a private message. But it's not actually something that's just sent between the two of us. When I send a private message over Facebook, I'm actually giving my private message to Facebook, and then Facebook gives it to you. How is that private? It's not private. It's sort of like I would have a chat with you by chatting with my creepy uncle, and then my creepy uncle would tell the story to you. That's as private as it is. Facebook is the creepy uncle. And the biggest creepy uncle on the net is Google. The services provided by these companies are excellent. Especially Google is very easy to like. Such great products. Google Search, excellent. Google Maps, very good. Gmail, Gdocs, all these different services, excellent products. And what's best, they're free. You pay nothing. Which is actually a little bit weird. How come they're weird? How come they are free? It's especially weird when you look at how much money Google is investing in their infrastructure. If you look at Google's spending, Google is investing more than $2 billion every quarter to their data centers. $2 billion is here. The last 5 quarters, every quarter, more than $2 billion, that's billion with a B, into their data centers. That's a lot of money. That's pretty big investment. In fact, if you go and look at the largest server manufacturers on the planet, you'll find something interesting. Who is the biggest manufacturer of servers? It's actually, right now, HP. IBM is number 2, Dell is number 3. Of course, these change every now and then. But number 4 is Google. Google is the world's 4th largest server manufacturer, which is kind of weird, because you can't go to a store and buy a Google server. Google is not selling servers. Google is not selling servers, yet it's the 4th largest server manufacturer on the planet. Why? Because they build their own servers. They need so many servers for their data centers that they are the 4th largest manufacturer on the planet. So if Google really is spending that much money every quarter, and the products are free, you would think that a company like this would be going bankrupt. Because they have massive costs and nobody's paying for the product. But Google is not going bankrupt. Google's profit last year was $12 billion in profit. 60 billion in revenues, 12 billion in profit. And if we make a modest assumption that Google has 1 billion users, including all of you, 12 billion in profit means that I made them $12 of profit last year. You made them $12 of profit last year. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You made them $12. You made them. We all made them $12 of profit last year without paying a cent. That's the value of our data. And I would much rather pay for Google services with money than with my privacy. But they don't give me that option. I can only pay with my privacy. I can only pay with my data. There's no other way. There are no free lunches. On the internet, there are no free lunches. There are no free search engines. There are no free cloud storage. There are no free websites. They don't exist. The only things on the net which really and truly are free are things like Linux kernel, which is open source and free. But most of the things that are called free are not free. In particular, apps that you download to your phone. The free apps that you download to your phone are not free. Either you pay for them with advertising or with in-app purchases, or they will monetize themselves by tracking you. You download something simple, like an application which turns your phone into a flashlight. Most phones now have that built in by default. Some of the cheapest ones don't. So you have to download an app. That's a pretty simple app. So how come a simple flashlight app, when installed, requires access to your location, to your contacts, to the internet, and the capability to send text messages? How the hell does an app that only is trying to turn your phone into a flashlight needs access to your location and needs to be able to send text messages? Well, because this is the way they monetize themselves. You pay nothing for the app. The app is free. So they have to make their money somehow. And they make it by profiling. So users, in many ways, are the problem. Users who don't know better. Users who always make the same mistakes. Always double click on every file, always follow every link, will always type in their credit card number into any form that asks for it. But blaming users is not the right thing to do. I heard a good story about users, about this guy who received a new desktop computer at his work. So he had the new computer and the old computer. So obviously he wanted to move his files from his old computer to his new computer. And the way he did it is that on his old computer he went to the My Documents folder, then he selected all the files with his mouse, then he right-clicked copy, then he disconnected the mouse from the old computer and brought the mouse to the new computer, and then clicked paste. And it didn't work. But you can sort of see what he was thinking. And obviously that wasn't a stupid user. His training wasn't up to the task. I mean, it could work like that. It just doesn't work like that. But another thing that users do is that users lie. What is the biggest lie on the internet? Well, the biggest lie is that I have read, and I agree to the license agreement. Users lie every time when they click the button. You click the button every time without reading the end user license. Why? Because they are so long and they're legalese. Who wants to read it? Nobody wants to read it. We know that nobody wants to read it. How do we know? Because we did a test. We set up a Wi-Fi hotspot in London 2 months ago. So you got free access to the internet. And of course you have to agree to our license agreement before you get the access. And somewhere in the center of the license agreement, there's this sentence about your firstborn child. So if you want to use our Wi-Fi, you have to give your firstborn child to us. And everybody clicked OK. Everybody clicked OK. Now we actually didn't go and pick up the child from their parents. I really think we should have. It would have been hilarious to go and ring somebody's doorbell. Bing bong, hello. We're from F-Secure. As you might remember, you agreed to our agreement last week, so we have come to pick up Jamie when they will take their key. You know. Of course, some people or some families would welcome that. Yes, please take it. Please take my teenage daughter. So people, of course, will accept any end-user license agreement. And today you have to accept an end-user license agreement even when you use things like these. Like your smart washing machine today has a license agreement. Your doorbell, smart doorbell, has a license agreement. Your smart TV has a license agreement. They're all connected to the internet. They're all becoming smart. So this is what we call the Internet of Things. And you've heard about the Internet of Things. It's when everything gets connected and it will eventually be everywhere. So let me tell you a fact. The Internet of Things is not in the future. The Internet of Things is here today. It's not something which is going to happen, it has already happened. And I can prove this to you. I can prove this. There was a friend of mine, Dan Tetler. He was researching an application called VNC. Many of you know VNC. It's a remote desktop tool through which you can remotely use another computer. Like here we have a Windows computer which is connected to a Mac computer, and you can see the screen of the Mac computer, you can control the keyboard and the mouse of the Mac computer. So what Dan was doing was that he wrote a script which was searching for VNC servers. So the script would scan IP addresses, and every time it would find a live IP address which was online, it would try connecting to that IP address with the VNC client. If there was no VNC server on that IP address, then it would just try the next address. However, if there was a VNC server, then it would try connecting to that remote desktop system. If the VNC server was asking for a username and password, obviously Dan's script didn't know the username and password. So it would just disconnect and try the next IP address. However, if the VNC server didn't ask for username or password, then his script would just connect to that server, to a random computer somewhere on the net, which required no authentication. And then his script would take a screenshot of the system he just connected to, and then it would disconnect and try the next IP address. He wrote this script in August, and he was thinking, okay, the script works, which IP addresses should I scan? And then he decided that he's going to scan them all. So his script was told to scan the whole IPv4 address space, which is 4.2 billion computers, including your computer. So if your computer was online on August the 2nd and had a public IPv4 address, Dan's script scanned your system. And if you had a VNC server in your system, it would try connecting it. And Dan's script found over 20,000 machines online which had VNC server running, and which were asking no username and no password. And then he started posting screenshots of the systems his script had connected to. For example, this. That's from Dan's Twitter. He connected, or his script connected to this system, which is Phil's Office Lights. And it's a remote system through which you can control the lights and the heating in some office somewhere in the United States. And you can also turn the alarm system on or off. And this system was online, with remote desktop, with no password. Then he found an oil field on the internet with remote desktop, with no password. Then he found a wheat silo on the internet with remote desktop, with no password. Then he found a dam. Then he found a food processing plant. Then he found a train control system connected to the internet with remote desktop, with no password. Then he found a radio station, complete with a DJ who was selecting the next songs and the next acts, which of course means that anyone else can also connect to this and select the next songs and the next acts. However, that would probably be illegal. And actually using the system without authorization, that's probably illegal. Just connecting to it when it requires no username can't possibly be. And then he found curtains. Dan's script found curtains from the internet. Curtains which you could open or close over the internet. And my friends, when curtains are on the internet, that means that the Internet of Things is not in the future. That means that the Internet of Things is here today. When curtains are on the internet, then the Internet of Things is here today. And the last thing I'll show you that Dan found was that he found a bed from the internet. A hospital bed, complete with a live patient on the bed. So you could actually see the patient's heart rate, his blood pressure, and his blood sugar levels. So some hospital somewhere has a bed which is on the internet with remote desktop and requires no password. I actually have a friend of mine who's a doctor, and I asked him about these values, and he told me that, yeah, those are okay, he's going to make it. So when we have these smart devices, smart TVs, smart telephones, smartphones, smart doorbells, smart curtains, smart beds, what the smart really means here is it means that they are exploitable. So every time you see smart something, think exploitable. A smart TV is an exploitable TV. A smart phone is an exploitable phone. Smart curtains are exploitable curtains. And they don't even have to be exploitable. And these smart devices themselves spy on us and breach our privacy. So for example, Samsung. What do we know about Samsung? Can anybody name any products that Samsung makes? What kind of things does this company make? TVs. Very good. Did you know that Samsung makes tanks? Yep. That's a Samsung tank. Pretty neat. But you're right, they do also make TVs and smartphones. Especially the TVs are interesting. If you actually take the time and read through the end-user license agreement of a Samsung Smart TV, it mentions that the Samsung Smart TV has this feature called voice recognition, which means it's going to be recording what you speak and sending what you speak over the internet to Samsung. So the end-user license agreement mentions that please be aware that if your spoken words include personal or otherwise sensitive information, that information will be recorded by your television and sent over the internet to third parties. What the hell? Please be aware that if you speak something sensitive in your living room, it's going to be recorded by your goddamn television. Or, did you know that when you are... any football fans here? Anybody? Anybody likes football? Yes. Which game is this? It's football. It's actually not a real game at all. That's FIFA from Xbox, FIFA 15. Did you know that when you play FIFA 15 on your Xbox and the computer makes a goal against you, and you're so much into the game that when the computer scores a goal against you, you swear? Did you know that the Xbox is actually listening to you? And it's going to give you minus points for swearing at the game. So this is sort of like having the, remember the creepy uncle? This is sort of like having the creepy uncle in our televisions or in our games console. Or what about phones? iPhone 6 featured this new thing called iPhone Health. There's a new app called Health, which tracks your health. including your movements. So it counts how many flight of stairs you climb every day, or how many steps you take every day. All right, that's kind of useful. But there was one user who was looking at this health app and he realized that it's actually counting my steps, and I never enabled this feature. How do I turn it off? I don't like that my steps are being counted and sent to Apple. I would like to disable this. How do I disable the step count? That's what he asked online. And the answer he got was very interesting. The answer he got was that actually iPhone has been counting your steps since iPhone 4S. It just never showed it to you before. And since this didn't bother you before, how come it's bothering you now? Because it's been doing it forever. And also, by the way, there's no way to disable it. So the creepy uncle is watching where you walk and how many steps you take every day and sends that away, and there's no way to disable that, and that's not even supposed to be a problem because it's been doing it forever without you knowing about it. And it does feel pretty hopeless sometimes. You hear comments like there's nothing that could be done, so we shouldn't even try. And I don't believe in that. I believe that we can do something with these things. Most importantly, we should care about these things. There's two different ways of fighting back against the creepy uncles from the devices and from the governments and from the criminals who target us. One way to protect yourself is to use technical safeguards, like encrypt your files, encrypt your email, encrypt your network traffic, use VPNs. Like Edward Snowden said, encryption works. So using encryption. But that's sort of like putting a band-aid to the problem. It's not going to fix the problem. It's going to protect us a little bit, but it's not really going to change the problem. What's going to change the problem is that we stand up and say no. That we stand up to our government and say that no, we don't like the idea of you collecting all of our telecommunications and keeping it forever. Us standing up against companies like Google and Samsung who are trying to collect all the information about our lives and even record us in our living room. If the users, if the customers say that we don't like this, well, they should listen, because we are the ones who pay for the product. So after 21 years in this business, the situation has never been as bad as it is. However, we have no plans of giving up the fight either. Thank you very much.